Bob Arum says he'd like to do Pacquiao Crawford for November, either on the 14th or the 21st, but nothing is concrete at the moment. To quote Bob Arum, he said, "The Pacquiao fight, obviously we'd like to do it. Whether we can do it, how we can do it, that's where we're figuring out now. Or that's what we're figuring out now, excuse me. Obviously, if it can happen, it will happen. And if it can't happen, it won't happen. But nothing is concrete on that. We hope we can do it. We're trying, but this is not a usual situation." We told Terence that he's scheduled to fight in November. If it can't be Pacquiao for various reasons, then we'll match him with somebody else. But we told Terence to prepare for mid-November, whether it's the 14th or the 21st. All right, so those are the words of Bob Arum talking about Pacquiao Crawford. When Pacquiao was still with Top Rank, there was talks of Pacquiao Crawford happening then. You know, almost like a passing of the torch fight. But Pacquiao, Freddie Roach, and even Bob Arum himself, as Pacquiao's promoter at the time, they never seemed keen on that fight taking place. So now that Pacquiao's with Al Haymon PBC, is Pacquiao going to change his mind? I mean, he's older now than he was back then. Is he going to change his mind and say, actually, yeah, I will have a bit of that Terence Crawford fight? Or is he going to do the same thing he did back in the days? Now, look, Pacquiao's a warrior. He's not a guy who's given to ducking fighters and all that kind of business. He is a warrior through and through. But generally speaking, the older fighters get, particularly when they're in the twilight of their careers, the older they get, if they're still a world champion, etc., they tend to take less risks. They tend to be a bit more circumspect. They tend to be a bit more careful about the fights they choose to take. I know this is an extreme example, but George Foreman, when he became the oldest heavyweight champion in the world in his mid-40s, once he got that title, he cherry-picked his way for the rest of his career. He wasn't taking on tough opposition. The toughest guy he took on was Shannon Briggs. And Shannon Briggs was a decent fighter, to be fair, but that was obviously right at the end of George Foreman's run. That's when he lost his so-called lineal championship. But for the most part, George Foreman's run, his second run as heavyweight champion, it was a bit of a circus show. You know, because, again, fighters who are of a certain age at the end of their career, when they get a second bite of the cherry and they're successful, they just try and milk it for all they can, generally speaking. So we have to see what Pacquiao is going to do now that he's beaten Keith Thurman. What's he going to do next? Is he going to try and take on the best of the best? Is he going to look for the biggest money fights? Is it all going to be in-house Al Haymon stuff? I hope I'm wrong, but I suspect that it will be. I suspect that Pacquiao and his team will not go for the Terence Crawford fight. Again, not because Pacquiao's scared or anything like that. I just think he's a bit more money-oriented, a bit more, you know, he's just thinking about his future, his kid's future. Obviously, he's a very rich man anyway, but and he does enjoy boxing. Don't get it twisted. But at the same time, he understands that there are younger guys out there. There are dangerous fighters out there. And when you are of a certain age, you know, you have to start thinking about your health more than you did when you were younger. Younger fighters tend to be more reckless in the ring. They tend to let it all hang out and leave it in the ring more so than older fighters do. So that's just my take on it. Perhaps I'll be proved completely wrong. I mean, I certainly thought that Keith Thurman was going to beat Manny Pacquiao, so I was totally wrong about that. We'll see if I'm wrong about this too. But the Crawford-Pacquiao fight, if it were to happen, and again, I hope I'm wrong, I hope it does happen, and I say that because Terence Crawford is being frozen out by PBC, so if they can get one of the PBC fighters to face him in Manny Pacquiao, in fact, Pacquiao's still the biggest name, isn't he, among all the PBC welterweights? He still carries the highest market value, so really and truly, that would be an absolute coup for Terence Crawford if he could get Pacquiao in the ring and take Pacquiao's title, you know? I always felt even several years ago that Terence Crawford would beat Manny Pacquiao, and Freddie Roach spoke publicly and said that he wouldn't like Manny Pacquiao to fight Terence Crawford. This was after Terence Crawford beat one of his other fighters, whose name escapes me at the moment. He was a 140-pounder from the Ukraine. God, I've forgotten the guy's name. Big, tall, lanky guy from the Ukraine. Was a decent fighter. Fought Josh Taylor. Oh, God, I can't remember the guy's name. But anyway, Terence Crawford beat him at 140, en route to becoming the undisputed light welterweight champion, or super lightweight, whatever you want to call it. And Freddie Roach said, yeah, Terence Crawford is the real deal. He can switch it up. He can fight different ways. I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said I wouldn't want to put Manny in with him because he's a real awkward guy to fight. And he could punch as well, Terence Crawford. He's not just a fancy Dan. So, yeah, let's see what happens here, people. Terence Crawford versus Manny Pacquiao. There's part of me which also thinks that maybe Bob Arum is just stringing Terence Crawford along. Maybe he knows that Terence Crawford is a little disgruntled. And Terence Crawford's been talking about not taking pay cuts and all this kind of business. Maybe Bob Arum's just, stringing him along, trying to keep him happy so that Terence Crawford doesn't try to go down the legal route and say, actually, if you can't pay me the kind of money that it stipulates in my contract, and if you can't keep me as busy as it stipulates in my contract, well then, I'm going somewhere else. There's part of me that thinks there could be an element of that going on, but who knows? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And if the fight did take place, Pacquiao-Crawford, Crawford-Pacquiao, whichever way around you want to frame it, who would you be picking? How do you see the fight going? Would it be Pacquiao scoring another big upset? And I know some of you are going to say Pacquiao-Thurman wasn't an upset. Well, maybe not to you personally, but to me it was, and to a lot of other people it was. So, will the Pacquiao-Crawford fight, if it takes place, be something similar? Another big upset? Will it be competitive, or will it be Terence Crawford being pretty dominant against Manny Pacquiao, maybe outpointing him over 12 rounds and winning a comfortable decision? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's Hamming, I'm out.